The night I signed my name on the contract, it didn't feel like selling my freedom, it felt like giving away something I never had the chance to protect. My father's debts were mounting, and time was the one thing we didn't have. Then came the offer, 1 year of silence, 1 year of pretending, 1 year of my life, in exchange for wiping away everything we owed. I didn't know his name at first, just that he was powerful, dangerous, rich enough to erase a life with a wire transfer. But the day I met him, everything changed. His name was Nathaniel Cade, billionaire recluse. Eyes like frost over deep water. A voice so still you almost didn't notice the weight of his words until they landed and stayed with you long after he left the room. The arrangement was simple. We would marry on paper. I would move into his estate, appear beside him at the right events, smile in the right photos, and never ask questions. In return, he would save my father. No intimacy, no affection, just presence and silence. You'll live in my house, he said, but not my life. I should have been relieved, but instead a strange kind of ache bloomed in me. Because I had always been overlooked, passed over, forgotten, and now I would live with a man who looked at me like I was invisible. But the heart doesn't follow logic, it listens to gestures, to pauses, to the quiet between words, and in that quiet, something unexpected began to grow. The estate was a world of glass and stone and cold marble, every surface polished, every room too large, and yet it held a strange comfort, like the walls knew how to keep secrets. I arrived 2 days before the wedding, and the housekeeper, a woman named Mary Ann, showed me to a suite with tall windows and ivory curtains. "You may decorate it," she said, "he won't mind, he never comes in here." That was my first clue. Nathaniel Cade didn't just live alone, he was alone. Deeply, quietly, by choice. The wedding was small, private, beautiful in a way that felt clinical, like luxury arranged by a machine. I wore a pale silk gown he'd chosen, elegant, minimal, almost too perfect. He wore black. No boutonniere, no smile, just precision. When the minister asked for vows, he spoke plainly, "This is a transaction, but I will honor it." I whispered, "I do," because the truth was I didn't know what else to say. When we walked back up the aisle, his hand brushed mine by accident, and I flinched, not because I feared him, but because I felt it. The spark, and he did too. The first night, I slept alone, in my suite. I thought he'd lock his door, but it was already open. Inside, a single light glowed near his desk. Books stacked high. A single glass of scotch untouched. That's how he lived, untouched. Untouched by warmth, untouched by anyone. I didn't speak. Neither did he, but I heard him whisper to himself as I passed. 1 year, he said, just 1 year, but the universe doesn't care about time frames. It only understands change, and the change started slow. The way he'd pause when I entered the room. The way he'd notice if I didn't finish my tea. The way he left the piano room open for me one afternoon, without a word. I didn't know he'd heard me humming the night before, but he had. And he remembered. I began to write in a journal. Small notes, observations, not about the house, but about him. How he always smelled faintly of cedar and rain. How he never raised his voice, but made people listen. How he only ever looked truly human when he thought no one was watching. I wrote, "He's a man made of winter, but there's spring beneath his silence." One morning, I found a book on my nightstand, a worn copy of a novel I loved as a child. Inside was a note in his handwriting. "You said you missed this one, I had the staff find it." He remembered. I hadn't even realized I said it out loud. And that night, I cried. Not because I was sad, but because kindness from someone who owed me nothing felt heavier than cruelty. He began joining me for dinner, always at the opposite end of the long table. But gradually the distance felt smaller. The first time he asked me a question about my childhood, I froze. "What made you stop painting?" he asked. I whispered, "Life." He nodded. "Then maybe it's time to start again." And the next morning, a brand new easel appeared in the sunroom. I didn't fall for him in a rush. It wasn't cinematic or sudden, it was slow, reluctant, painful. Like thawing after frostbite, like sunlight after too many gray mornings. I began to see him not as a contract, but as a man. One who had been broken by people who said they loved him. One who built walls so high even he forgot what they were protecting. But I saw. I felt it, and it terrified me, because I had a secret. one I couldn't voice, one that made my heart pound in my chest every time he stood too close. I had never been with anyone, not intimately, not emotionally, not physically. I didn't even know how to be touched, and I knew if I told him it could change everything. Not because I feared him, but because I feared what he would feel. Responsibility, guilt, distance. I didn't want to lose the only closeness I'd ever known. One night, it poured rain, and instead of staying in, I stepped out barefoot into the courtyard. The storm kissed my skin, my hair plastered to my neck. I twirled once like a child. When I turned around, he was watching me. Soaking wet, silent, and then he stepped into the rain too. Just once, just to meet me halfway. We didn't kiss, we didn't speak, but I swear the rain carried something sacred that night, an unspoken vow neither of us were ready to admit. The turning point came during a charity gala. Everyone wanted his attention. But he stayed near me. Just close enough. At one point someone asked how we met. And before I could stammer out a lie, he answered calmly. She walked into my silence and taught it how to breathe. My heart stopped. He looked at me then, not like a man pretending, but like a man who didn't know how to stop feeling something real. That night, I told him the truth. Every trembling word. No one's ever been close enough. I whispered, I've never given myself to anyone. And I don't know how. He didn't touch me. He didn't speak. He just sat beside me and said, then let me learn with you. At your pace. Without expectation. I cried. Not out of shame, but out of relief. From that moment we stopped pretending. We didn't rush, we didn't label anything. But he stopped calling it a contract. He started calling it ours. He took me to his childhood home in Maine, showed me the attic where he hid as a boy, told me about his mother who loved wildflowers but died before ever seeing him fall in love. She'd have liked you, he said. You're quiet, but you see everything. I baked him cinnamon rolls the way my mother did before she passed. He told me he hated sweets, but he finished every bite. I caught him humming once off-key. I didn't laugh, I just listened. And the more I listened, the more I fell. But love, real love, doesn't always come without fear. And the deeper we got, the more terrified I became that it would end. The contract still loomed. 1 year, one exit clause. One countdown I never asked for. I didn't know what he would choose when it was over. But I knew I wouldn't survive going back to a life where I wasn't seen. Not after this. The day before the contract expired, I found a letter on my pillow. Handwritten, sealed. No name. Just a single line on the envelope. If silence was our beginning, let truth be our forever. I opened it with shaking fingers. Inside he wrote, you were never part of the deal. You were the reason I needed one. Because I thought I'd never feel again. But you made me believe in softness. In second chances. In love that doesn't demand, but waits. If you'll stay, not as my obligation, not as my partner on paper, but as the only person who ever made this house feel like a home, then meet me in the garden. No dress required. No guests. Just us. And this time no contracts. Just a question. I ran barefoot through the hall. The sun was setting. The garden was glowing gold. He stood there in a simple shirt. No suit. No mask. Just a ring in his hand and eyes full of hope. Stay, he said. This time because you want to. And I did. I said yes before the wind could steal the word away. Before the fear could silence it. Because for once, I didn't have to pretend. Some people fall in love with grand gestures. I fell in love with silence. With quiet dinners. With books left open. With eyes that never looked away. And in the stillness of his arms that night, I realized he never paid for my silence. He gave me his. And in return, I gave him everything.